You are streaming.
So we are live, is that correct, Sarah?
Yep, but I haven't hit record yet, so hold on one more second. All right, we are good to go now.
Excellent. I'd like to call the May 2nd, 2022 Joint Animal Service Commission meeting to order. I see that we have all of our board members present. Quick introductions. I'm Lisa Parsley and Chair from Olympia. Passing it off to Peter.
Peter Agabi, Tumwater.
Carolina.
Carolina Mejia, Thurston County.
Dick.
I am Dick Blinn. I'm the president of the Thurston County Humane Society.
Excellent. And not least but last, Ed.
Ed Kunkel, City of Lacey.
Excellent. And Sarah, you and Shannon are in the person and the holding down the hybrid version of this, correct? Can you introduce each other?
I am Sarah Hawk, Executive Director of Joint Animal Services.
I wasn't sure if we were supposed to introduce each other, but
Okay. I can
Sorry
also-
about that.
This is,
no, I was joking. I'm joking.
That's good. It's good.
Good, Lacey.
Excellent. Okay, I am seeking approval of the agenda for the evening.
So moved.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none. Excellent. I would like approval of the consent agenda, which mainly has to do with our meeting minutes from April 4th.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any corrections, changes? All righty. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Moving right along to public comment. Do we have anyone signed up?
I do not see anybody in attendance this evening, nor have I received any written public comment.
Excellent. Let's move on to the staff presentations and reports. I know I'm truly a geek when I'm looking forward to a budget overview, but please take it away.
All right, hold on one moment while I share my screen. All right, this evening, we will be going over the Joint Animal Services budget review, specifically our 2022 budget. You guys should have received in your board packet the reserve fund policy, as well as the 2022 Animal Services budget and the 2022 M&O distribution. Those were some of the handouts that we'll be utilizing tonight to go over the budget. First up, we're going to do a brief overview of the reserve fund. So the reserve fund policies and procedures, there are three different funds that we have established policies for. First is the operating reserve fund. So Joint Animal Services will maintain an operating reserve fund to ensure normal operations and maintenance of current services levels in case of large unanticipated one-time expenditure requirements, a revenue deduction due to a change in jurisdictional participation, adverse litigation, or similar unforeseen action. So Joint Animal Services Commission requires that we maintain a reserve equal to at least 2 months of operating expenses. And these funds will be committed by a vote of the JASCOM board and can only be removed by the same action. Spending of funds will require a formal staff request outlining the funding request and justification for using the operational reserve fund. The JASCOM board will review the request before voting to approve the expenditure. And the replenishment of the fund will be replenished using end-of-year cash or additional assessments and must be fully funded within 24 months after use. The Recession Resiliency Fund will be maintained as a fund to serve as bridge funding necessary to offset lower donation levels during a recession. These funds will be used exclusively for maintaining normal operations of joint animal services. So again, funding level, we will maintain reserve equals to at least 2 months of operating expenses. These funds will be assigned by the JASCOM board and can be reassigned as needed by the JASCOM board with no formal action. Classifying a recession. Spending of these funds will first require a formal acknowledgement from the JASCOM board stating that the region is experiencing a recession, as well as Thurston County region having reported unemployment rates above 6.5% for 2 consecutive quarters, or financial forecasts estimate unemployment will average in excess of 6.5% for the next fiscal year. To spend these funds, the board will have the authority to approve up to 3 months of operating expenses at a time to cover shortfalls and donations. Joint Animal Services staff will be required to provide a detailed request, including specific budget items that will be covered by the Recession Resiliency Fund. And the replenishment of this fund JASCOM board has formally acknowledged the end of the recession, or if the region's unemployment rate falls below 6.5%. This fund will be replenished using end-of-year cash or additional assessments and must be fully funded within 48 months of the end of the recession. And the contingency fund. Joint Animal Services will maintain a contingency fund to provide funds to address one-time emergencies, unanticipated expenditure requirements, or fund off-cycle budget requests. Joint Animal Services, again, will maintain a reserve at a level decided by the board this time. These funds will be assigned by the board and can be reassigned as needed by the board with no formal action. Spending of these funds will require a formal staff request outlining this funding request and justification for using the contingency fund. The JASCOM board will review the request before voting to approve the expenditure. And the replenishment of this fund will only be replenished if both the operating reserve fund and recession resiliency fund are fully funded. If both funds are fully funded, funds should be replaced using end-of-year cash only within 12 months after use. And some additional guidance for these funds. These funds should be depleted before using operating reserved fund. So for example, when we entered the pandemic in 2020, we used our contingency fund to do a reduction in assessments for all the jurisdictions that year, noting that things were going to perhaps get tight and with all the unexpected things coming with COVID. So mid-year, JASCOM voted to reduce the assessments, and we used the contingency fund to balance out what that budget would have been. I don't have our net position for this meeting due to some staffing issues. Finance reached out and said that they'll have the net position for us next meeting, which is great. And so we will use the reserve fund policy to kind of walk through what our net position is, because at that time it will show where our funds are at, both in reserve donations as well as our operating expenses.
Sarah, before we move on, just
Yes.
really quickly for viewers who might be watching on YouTube, would you mind collapsing the video to the next one over? Perfect.
This up a little bit. Okay. So this is the overall budget summary. This is a very simplified version of the budget that I sent you guys. So you can see comparison from 2021 to 2022. 2022's budget does increase, Thurston County being at full services. And how the expenditures are broken down are into general services, shelter operations, field services, licensing, grants, and also our total debt expenditures for our total budget of $2,818,961. How we calculate the distribution of the budget to the jurisdictions and their assessment is a per capita basis. So we use the county's estimated, I should say the state, my apologies. It's OFM's population projections as well as populations from the previous year in order to determine our per capita breakdown. So as you can see, Thurston County is at 51.9%, with Olympia at 19.58, City of Lacey is 19.5, and Tumwater is 9.03. This is one of the other ways that we look at the budget when we are talking about the assessments. So as you can see, we have it broken down by jurisdiction with also the total overall budget. What you see here that's going to be a little bit different is this budget total here does not include the debt expenditure that brings it up to the 2.8. And so at first, what you're going to see is a much higher number before we start taking into account depreciation, our grants and donations, our direct revenues, as well as our shared revenues. And direct revenues, as a reminder, are licensing, reclaims, and adoptions. These revenues are totally based on the number of licenses, the number of animals reclaimed, as well as the number of animals adopted in your jurisdiction. Shared revenues are all other revenues that the shelter does produce, whether it's contracts with JBLM or Yelm, to private donations from both an individual as well as foundations. It would also include the lease of the coffee stand on our property and other items like that. Do you guys have any questions about the M&O before we move on? I will point out under City of Lacey does have a C note, and that is because historically, if for some reason there is a tiny rounding error, the City of Lacey usually is the one that will round to make everything work out. Some budget years will have a dollar that's off, and that's where it gets rounded to.
You guys good?
Yeah, hold on.
Final assessments. I like to point this out too, because the jurisdictional assessments only encompass a portion of our revenues budget. And so overall, the jurisdictions contribute $1,758,497 to the overall budget. And going to the direct revenues that we talked about earlier, this is a breakdown by jurisdiction, how we budget, and could do it's all historical based over years, and what a 3-year average is also taken into consideration when we're calculating these. And we have been on a downward trend overall for the last couple of years. I do not know if that'll stay the same now that we are at an endemic and not a pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see where we land this year as far as these numbers. But we have been consistent on a downward trend, especially in licensing, for the last several years, even prior to the pandemic. And so this would be the revenues that are contributed individually to your jurisdictions every year to offset the assessment. The other one that we look at is shared revenues. So this gets a little more detailed, but some of these are, for example, our contracts, as you see here, additional shelter fees, out of county reclaims or adoptions, as well as adoption promotions and other items for the total for shared revenue. Questions? Okay. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions overall about the budget as presented? Okay. Lisa, do you want me to go ahead, or do you want to move us?
Maybe it'd be good to, I don't know how many of the board members know that we're into the first year of 3 years to get back to full assessment to the jurisdictions. Can you?
Yes, so we're actually in our second year of 4 years.
Second.
In 2019, we were at an overall high of using reserves to, in addition, from the jurisdictional assessments of upwards of $214,000 that we would use to offset those jurisdictional assessments and other operational expenditures. And so 2 years ago, JASCOM made the commitment to reduce that so that the jurisdictions were paying for the true cost of service. And so we reduce that, we reduce the reliance on reserves by $70,000 year over year. And so we have reduced the budget. Last year was by 70, this year was for 70, and so on until we are at the true cost. And so that way we will not be pulling from reserves on an annual basis to contribute to the budget unless it's for actual capital projects after year 4.
So all of you are good with that. And just because if your jurisdictions ask, it's Sarah, and the reorg that we did on our system allowed us to see that we were draining our reserves to maintain animal shelter and animal services. So the jurisdictions are slowly coming up to speed, which is what they asked of us. Did I get that right in summary?
Yes. All right, up next, we do have a budget amendment to put forward to JASCOM. To go a little bit more in depth with this one, last year we brought the original budget amendment to Joint Animal Services Commission for a plumbing repair. Now, because of we did the budget amendment late last year, hoping that we were going to be able to start the repair, but due to a lack of response to requests, the city ended up having to perform the repair, and we were not able, because of that delay with nobody responding, to actually start the work until January 2022. So the original $45,401 was never spent in 2021. And so we are asking the commission to vote on the budget amendment for 2022 for those plumbing repairs that took place.
Do any of you have any questions?
No question.
What?
No questions.
Okay. All right. So the total amount spent is 45,401.
Correct.
But it was spent in 2022, just to be, so I'm clear. That's why it needs to be a budget amendment for this year.
Correct.
Okay, got it. All right. If there's no questions or further discussions, I'd love to entertain a motion to pass this budget amendment.
I don't think I get the vote.
Nope.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, I'll take that as a second. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 There we go. Budget amendment is passed. Well done, Sarah. Okay, we're moving on to some of our discussion items.
Yes.
The JASCOM retreat, June's meeting, and the recommendation. Do you just want to launch further into that, Sarah?
I would love to. The JASCOM retreat and the June meeting tie together actually, so it can be a part of the same discussion. So first, it would probably be better to mention that June's meeting, which falls on June 6th, also falls at the same time during the executive update for Thurston County management, emergency management. And my understanding is that all the city council, all the Board of County Commissioners, high level directors and managers of each of the jurisdictions are all included on this. And so it is happening at the same time. And so my question to JASCOM is, should we move the meeting to a different date to accommodate the executive emergency management meeting?
Any comments from the board?
Sounds like a pretty good idea. Everybody's going to be very busy doing something else, so.
Yeah, if there's a conflict in the schedule, then that makes sense to rearrange our June retreat.
Yeah, I agree.
Fantastic. And so what I can do is I can send out a doodle poll with alternate dates for the June meeting, which would actually encompass a portion of the meeting would be the JASCOM retreat for the year. And for the retreat, Chair Persley, do you want to talk a little bit about what we would be talking about at the retreat for June?
One of the thoughts that I had was, one, we spent a great deal of time last year. Was it last year? Really? Wow. Okay. Coming up with our strategic goals and action items. And it would be really good for us just to review them and make sure there's no adjustments, and maybe do a year-end summary of the strategic goals where we are, Sarah. But then also, I think it's time we start having, and this discussion will not be done in the period of time we're setting aside, where is JASCOM and the Animal Services going over the next 3 to 7, 10 years? Because we've got a building that's getting assessed for its capability to handle our capacity and handle our ability to get to standard of care as a shelter. So we have things like that to be discussing. Is where are we going? Are we going to be looking at a new building? Are we looking at a major remodel? And then what is the financial structure for JASCOM in the future? Is this going to become a standalone that the jurisdictions pay a fee to provide services for the jurisdictions? Are we going to stay with this current model where we're at? What is the most sustainable with those two things on mind? And just sort of start entering into that conversation, because that's a big, heavy lift no matter where we go. And I don't want to put blinders on and say, okay, when the building's falling down, now we'll do a capital campaign. That's a silly way to go about this. And we already had problems with our sewer. So this is just the beginning in my mind. And so I was thinking year in review, strategic goals, actions. Do we need to adjust those? And then just sort of start having that conversation. Where's the jurisdictions? Where's the board looking to the future? Because it's better to start now than in 3 years from now and be in a crisis. Is that okay with the board?
Yes.
Great. Then I will make sure that it's a combined retreat and JASCOM meeting when I put forth the doodle poll for alternate dates in June.
Let's move on. Looks like we finally got somebody that might want to fill our other nonprofit seat.
We do. So just a brief update on both positions that we were soliciting for. Let me stop my share. We did send out a recruitment letter asking all of the veterinarians in the Thurston County area to apply for the veterinarian position. We did not get a response, so I will reopen that up. And we will solicit again for veterinarians for that position. But we did get applicants for I'm sorry, guys, the non-required,
Profit. Oh, yeah.
which was the nonprofit seat. And so what I would like to put forth to JASCOM and make the recommendation is that we appoint Joe McGugan, who is the executive director of Feline Friends of Olympia. Joe has been a huge animal welfare advocate in the community, and she also advocates for some of the community's most vulnerable pets, which include kittens and feral cats. Her organization, Feline Friends, has been a partner of Joint Animal Services for many, many years. And we have a very great working relationship. They pull a number of cats from us every year. And so I think between Joe's experience as well as Feline Friends' mission, vision, and values of their organization, I think it is a wonderful, I think she would be a wonderful addition to JASCOM with her knowledge. So I am recommending to JASCOM that we appoint Joe McGugan. My next steps would be, though, if JASCOM, I am unsure if JASCOM, would you like to meet and interview her at our June meeting?
Was she the only applicant?
She was, but it's an excellent applicant.
How does the board feel about that? Would you like to meet her, interview her? Ed, you just unmuted.
Well, process of elimination, she's the only applicant and she's well qualified to fill that spot. Unless there's objection from the board, I would say go ahead and nominate her and put her in place. And yes, I would like to meet her. But I think we can bypass the interview because her record speaks for itself and her commitment and advocacy for wanting to be part of this. Are we gonna disapprove after interviewing her and then start over with, I might have thought to her if she wants the position, she has the background, she's made the effort. How bad could it be?
Yeah, this is Peter Agavi. I have to agree with Ed. I was going through the letters of recommendation for her this afternoon, and I think, given she's the only applicant, and given she's very qualified, and she's recommended by Sarah, and she has a good credentials, I say let's keep the interview, and then have her meet us, show up at a meeting, and then introduce ourselves, and then call it good.
Excellent.
If the board agree.
Dick or Carolina, do you have anything to add?
I'm in agreement.
I didn't want to say anything, but I've known Joe since I moved here and opened our business. She is, wow. It's great that she applied because you can't get a better person to come do this. So that's my personal opinion. But I am looking for an action then. Sounds like, Sarah, we can potentially appoint her tonight. Excellent. Can I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Sarah, we're going on to the director's report.
One moment and I will share my screen again.
Tell Joe, welcome aboard. We look forward to working with her.
I will absolutely let her know. And she'll be very excited as well as honored. She was very, very excited for the opportunity to apply for this position and work more with Joint Animal Services. So I'm excited to share that the city of Lacey they went through a competitive RFP process and selected a consultant to assist with the project of examining and evaluating the city's non-represented salary schedule and classification system. Joint Animal Services is included in the non-rep study. For JAS, the city and HR understands that there may not be sufficient response from the selected cities that we are using as part of the study. And the consultant will be working with us to determine, how we can pull market information. Results and recommendations of the survey will be conveyed to JASCOM. And depending on the results, there could potentially be budgetary impacts for the 2023 Animal Services budget. We are set to have a compassion, fatigue, and emotional resilience workshop on May 25th. It is a half-day workshop led by Lauren Glickman from Foray Consulting. What I really loved about Lauren's take on everything is she has spent her first 20 years in animal welfare. And so she understands the uniqueness of our situation and is designing the workshop around the resilience in high intensity animal care environments. We also have partnered with Good Pup, which is an app and online training and behavior consultant. So Good Pup does training one-on-one at home on your schedule with trainers ready for help 24/7. And for every adopter that signs up or community member with Good Pup, Joint Animal Services will actually receive funds that will go into our scholarship program to assist fosters who are working with behavior animals. And Best Friends has also contributed $1,000 to start off our scholarship fund for these services. So this way our fosters can get one-on-one support in addition to shelter staff when working with a behavior dog specifically, who we have moved into a foster home to have some time away from the shelter. And so this is a really excellent next step. Every person who signs up always gets a week free. And so it's also a really nice resource for people who perhaps are first-time dog owners, or maybe even a dog who needs a little extra help with their owner, learning to be polite with their sits and their downs. We did host a shelter partner tour. We had the CEOs of Seattle Humane, Pasado Safe Haven, and Kitsap Humane Society visit our shelter. They took time to learn more about our shelter and the services we provide. All three organizations are currently transfer partners and pull animals from JAS when needed. Prior to the pandemic, Seattle Humane was actually our largest transport partner and usually transferred between 600 and 800 animals every year from us. Licensing, I did meet with Auditor Hall to discuss licensing options for residents in the jurisdictions. We are still awaiting numbers from both parties to determine if licensing through the auditor's office is cost effective and if there would need to be an increase in licensing charges to accommodate increased costs of service. So that is still to be determined. And once I know more and have some final numbers, I will be able to present what our findings are to JASCOM. And then the last, of course, is the commission recruitment. We put forth Joe McGugan, and I will reopen the veterinarian recruitment and see if we can find a veterinarian to appoint. Strategic plan update. I just have a small update this month. All presentations for the jurisdictions have been completed. We rounded off April with presentations to Thurston County Board of County Commissioners and the Olympia City Council. And happy tales. So to finish off my report today, this one just happened on Friday. Uta came in on a whim and to look at cats because she was thinking about adopting. She had just lost her cat a few weeks ago and she wasn't sure if she was ready. She had plans to go look at another agency, but decided to start her search early when she drove past the shelter. She decided she wanted to meet one of our black cats in our adoption area, and the cat immediately came to her. And when she reached for him, he crawled into her arms, just like in this picture, where he seemed totally content. She did leave hesitantly, wanting to think about it. And the staff tells me at about an hour later, she came back after talking with her friend, and her friend joined her. And she immediately adopted this handsome man, who I do not know his name yet because he was not named at the time that she adopted him. But she was so happy and she looked like this the whole time. And it was really sweet. She didn't want to put the cat down, and he was hugging her the whole time as well. So really, really great, happy tale. And I'm so happy to share this one with you. It was so cute, and she was beyond pleased and very happy to have met this lovely gentleman.
It is true. They pick us, right?
They sure do.
Walked right up and said, okay, you're mine.
Yep, hugged her right back.
Couple questions about the veterinarian recruitment. I can help you with that, but I think we talked a little bit. We're going to have to be more descriptive in what the job will be because veterinarians are massively overloaded right now. So trying to convince them that they can take another job on will be the tough part. So if we can make sure we detail that pretty well so that they don't feel like they're going to have to pick up 20 hours a week.
Absolutely. We can add a description of the commitment level and how many hours that would be a month to see if that helps. I imagine it does sound initially very daunting to want to apply for this position. And so if we can remove some of those barriers and make people have a much more broader understanding of what the responsibilities entail, we can certainly do that. And so I will make some edits to the recruitment letter. And Lisa, if you would like, I can send the letter to you as well, so that you can personally send it to anybody who you feel might be open to the opportunity.
I know of 4 people. I'll send it to you. It might take some convincing that it's not massive job or time commitment. So, but I think there are four veterinarians in the area that would probably, 1, benefit, I think would be good for them, and 2, I think they'd really bring a good voice. Okay. I love your happy tales. Those are my favorite. But I am biased as a veterinarian. I admit it. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
So I have a kind of a sad story. So last week, watching television about the war in Ukraine, and it was a clip from Bucha where that massacre had occurred. And there was this killer dog up on the porch that, so short story is the owner, they were a retired couple, had been killed, and this dog was sitting on the porch waiting for them to come home. Don't know how long the dog was sitting on the porch, because this was done in Ukraine language, which is in a way a little bit similar to Russian, which I speak a little bit of. So I was able to piece along what they were saying, but it was a very sad story. And the dog had not eaten for about 2 weeks and refuses to be fed. I don't have an animal, so, and my daughter had wanted the dog for a very long time, but seeing that tells me that they're just like humans, except they can't really talk like us, but they are humans in a way. So that was a sad story. So that is my not a happy tale, but some story.
Peter, it's so true. They've actually done studies with dogs and cats where they show the animal pictures, not the person, pictures of their people, and they measure their hormonal response that's in the blood. They will get the same hormonal responses that parents get when they see their children, including oxytocin and a few other hormones that are well known for attachment. And when they turn around and show the same family member a picture of their dogs, it mirrors exactly the hormones the dog or cat is secreting. So it's a true honest to God attachment. They go through grief, they go through the same thing. And when people used to say don't anthropomorphize for what an animal's feeling, well, maybe they were wrong, because we know that they can form deep attachments, and can be lifelong, and it's bad when they lose their family member.
This Miss Akita was it's been a while since I have a crying emotion, but I had some tears in my eyes because I kind of feel for the dog. The owners ain't gonna come home. They were actually buried in the backyard, but he didn't know it. But sad story.
Yes, sad. But you're here, you're helping us with our own sad stories, so they're not sad anymore, right, Sarah?
That's right.
The work you're doing here. I know it doesn't help for that dog, believe me, God. I volunteered at the Katrina hurricane and we saw similar kinds of things. And I get it. And it talks a lot about you as a person, Peter. You got a big heart.
Yeah, but I didn't know that I would have this kind of emotion in me, because men are not supposed to cry, right? Because we're hard at it, but it does happen. Yeah.
I can tell you, my husband is a 6'6" marshmallow on the inside. So, okay, if there's nothing else, we'll adjourn. Thank you, Peter, for sharing, and we'll adjourn, and we'll see you all in a month.
Thank you.